Hey there. Welcome to the first of the two-part session on understanding stress and managing stress. I'm Shibu Verghese, and I am a certified stress management coach from the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching, USA. I have 18 years of experience in working in corporates across multiple MNCs and various senior roles in engineering and product management. I started my coaching journey because I believe the workplaces need to be better and the workplaces need to be toxicity free. I have been impacted by toxic workplaces, so I felt the need to have a workplace free of toxicity. And I am on a mission to create a million empathetic leaders because I believe that empathetic leaders are those who can create those toxicity free workplaces, and their leadership and their authority will bring in the positive change, which will impact not only the people they lead, but their families and the communities of the employees, and which will spread a positive ripple effect of change across the world. That's the bigger mission I am in. So, talking about stress, we know that stress is a constant companion. It is undesirable companion, but then yes, that's the sad reality of today, that our workplaces are stressful, our our communities are stressful, and there is a lot of stress around. I deal specifically with work stress because a lot of our time is spent in our workplace, and as I said earlier, I believe our workplaces must be toxicity free. So to manage something or to eliminate something, the first step is to understand what it is and take the small steps to get into a better place in this and in this context. We need to understand what stress is, what causes stress, and how that can be managed. Right. So in this session today, we will look at what is stress and what causes it. And in the next session, we'll get into more details of how to manage stress. All right. So let's get started. Let me share something with you. I want to start with a few trends that I have seen. All right. So if you look at the trends today, 86% of employees report that they are struggling or they are suffering at work, which means that they are going through high levels of stress. And 57 percentage of employees working in the technology sector report high stress levels. And the third point here is specifically for India. Employees who report burnout is 62%. 62% of employees across domains report burnout, which is three times the global average. So you can imagine the amount of mental stress we go through as a country, as a working nation, and these are only reported numbers, right? And entrepreneurs are also not free from the this problem of stress. 60% of entrepreneurs report moderate to high stress. Right? And the worrying factor is here in the bracket, in the red box. India is in the top bracket of stressful countries in the world, along with US and Japan. Okay, so as Indians, we know genetically we are prone to certain health conditions, especially of the heart and all. And if you, when we add stress on top of that, it becomes much more worse. So it is very, very important that we understand stress and we take the necessary actions to go ahead and do something about it so that the stress is reduced. And why do we think stress is such a big deal? Usually, when we ask people, or when I ask people in my before my one-to-one sessions in the pre-consultation meeting that I have, a generic question of "Do you have stress?" is mostly met with "Oh yeah, stress," as if we have kind of accepted stress as being part of our lives. Um, it is fine as long as it is under manageable levels, or little discomfort here and there. We just try to ignore it. But stress is not just about this small irritants that come in the workplace, or stress is not just about sleeping late or working late. It is much, much more than that, because stress impacts all the systems in our body. And I want to show you that. So just look at this table here. Effects of stress on the health of individuals. Stress affects our nervous system, our cardiovascular system, endocrine, immune, mus- muscles, our skeletal systems, the digestive system, respiratory, reproductive, skin, and our sleep. And for every system of our body that is impacted by stress, there are short-term effects and there are long-term effects. Short-term effects: increased heart rate, tense muscles, slow digestion, shortness of breath, restlessness. And when all these things happens, sweating, anxiety, right? Pain in the body. I mean, or I have seen people who have this stiff shoulder muscles because whenever they are stressed. And whenever this happens, we kind of either take it lightly or we accept it as part of our work or our job. And after a certain time, it kind of we go back to what we were. These are the short-term effects. But if we continue, being in this state of stress for a longer period of time, the short-term effects doesn't stop there. It leads to long-term effects. And what are the long-term effects? Depression, memory problems, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, chronic pain, ulcers, asthma, infertility, hair loss, burnout. Sadly, it is when we begin to see the long-term effects that we tend to take stress seriously and tend to go and do something about it. And usually by that time, it's it's a bit late, because then we have to kind of go ahead, depend on a medication and other therapies and all. I'm not saying that it is not irreversible. No, we can address those issues, but then the point I'm trying to make here is we need to identify and eliminate stress before it becomes chronic, before it becomes a long-term issue with us and stays with us. So how are we going to do that? The first step in addressing anything, as I said, is identification. Let's see how we can identify stress. So what is stress? We talk a lot about stress. We hear a lot about stress. Stress is here, stress is there, stress is everywhere, and everybody talks about stress. But what is stress all about? It's a natural reaction, right? Natural reactions of our body when changes or challenges occur in our physical, emotional, or behavioral changes. So anything that our body reacts to, the main purpose is existence. If something is threatening our existence, that is when our body reacts to it, because the main function of the brain and of the body is protection. So stress developed as a self-protecting mechanism. And when was it developed? It was developed way, way before, when humans were living in caves, cavemen. And during that time, there were so many threats from the environment of wild animals, for example. And whenever there was that existential threat, then human beings had to do something about it. And that is when the body created this mechanism of stress. And it whenever it was in the state of stress, it triggered a flight or a fight response, which means that there is a threat. And for the human beings to survive, they had to either fight that threat or flee from them. And it was a mechanism from where whenever there was this challenge in front of them, brain released certain hormones, cortisol and all, which kind of triggered this response within their bodies. And when that response was triggered, that got into the flight or fight state. And what was triggered whenever these hormones were released? Increased heart rate, increased glucose production, decreased digestion, high blood pressure, fast breathing, muscle tension. Why? because because all the blood had to go into the limbs to fight it or to flee from the threat. uh, and the voluntary activities like digestion and all kind of decreased, because to enable the other the parts of the body like the limbs to kind of have that strength to fight the threat or flee from them. This is the important point to note. Our bodies are not designed for long periods of stress. Now, in our example, during the caveman days, there was a threat. Either they fought it or they, fled from that, and it is kind of supposed to kind of increase and then come down to a normal state. And then whenever it kind of happened the next time, the stress was supposed to increase and address that in whichever way, and then come down. That is how our bodies are designed. But look at what is happening today. We are in a constant state of stress, and our bodies does not identify or does not differentiate between what is causing the stress, whether it is an existential crisis, or whether it is the presentation that we have to make to our seniors or to the board. Our bodies does not differentiate between these both. But what our bodies go through is the same uh, reactions whenever something is be threatening us, something is challenging in front of us. So, what happens when we are at the a state of constant stress every day, right from the morning when we wake up till the time we go to bed, and usually we go to bed late at night. Constant stress, constant worry, constant anxiety. And where is it all leading us to? First, the short-term effects and the long-term effects, which I believe you would agree with me is not healthy. Just imagine the impact that your bodies are taking. Just imagine the impact that your families are taking, because when you are in this constant state of stress, when you're um, when you don't have that mental space to kind of relax, you react differently. You react badly to any small irritants within your families, with your kids. It impacts relationships. And with this long-term effect, just look at the medical costs of stress, right? So what can be done about that? When we talk about stress, and we already spoke that stress is a natural reaction of our body to a particular challenge. Now there is something called as a stress model. Let's look at what is a stress model. What causes stress? Okay. Now the stress model is, it explains how stress starts. This is the first step. An individual is exposed to a challenging situation. That challenging situation in olden days could have been a wild animal, existential threat. The challenging situation could be a presentation that we are supposed to make, or the challenging situation could be a public speaking event, which we have never done. A challenging situation could be an exam. The challenging situation could be anything. Stress starts when an individual is exposed to a challenging situation. When that happens, the person evaluates the demand of that situation, one, and they also evaluate their resources of coping with that demand. For example, let's take a situation of public speaking. Okay, and someone who is not good at public speaking, or who has not done public speaking ever, they are asked to do this public speaking. So that is a challenge. So the person evaluates the demands of the situation. Oh, I'm supposed to speak, which I have not done ever. And they also evaluate, there is, am I capable to meet the demands of the situation? They do a evaluation of both. And what happens? This person initiates a strategy for coping. And how do I do that? If this person knows how to handle that situation, then there is no stress. If the person evaluates that they do not have the resources to cope with the situation, that is what causes stress. If a person who has never done public speaking, if they know that they are going to face the public for the first time, they have no prior training, or they have no resources to cope with that demand of that situation. That causes stress. At the same time, imagine a political leader gets a chance to talk to the public. That person will never experience stress because that person is looking forward for it. Yes, the demands of the situation are the same: stand in front of the public and talk. But the political leader has the resources to cope with that demand, the cope with that demand of what the situation is presenting to them, right? So in that case, this political leader does not face stress, which the other person is uh, facing, or if the other person is going through. So, what is the important point here? The important point is stress always happens when there is a situation and uh, our resources that we have is lesser than the demand placed by that situation. So, there are two things that can happen here. Either bring down the demands of the situation, which rarely happens, or we have to increase our own resources to coping with that demand. When that happens, that is when stress can be brought down. So, what is the takeaway from today's session? The takeaway is this: stress is a perception, which means that whenever there is a situation that kind of presents itself, how to deal with it is our own perception, because we evaluate that situation. We evaluate if we are capable to deal with that situation. And if we know that, yes, we are capable to deal with that situation, then there is no stress there. But then when we realize that our resources or our abilities are not sufficient to deal with it, that is where stress comes into picture, and that is where the effects of stress slowly start showing. So to start with, I want you to leave you with this takeaway from this session, that stress is a perception. And if it is a perception, like any other perception, it can be managed, it can be handled, and the perception can be changed. All right. So in the next session, the second part of this series, I'll take you through what it takes to manage stress better. All right. So let me know in the comments what you think about this session and what was your biggest takeaway from this. All right. See you in the next session. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.